a beautiful book. Look for me there, Grieving My Father, Finding Myself. Luke Russert, the author, is here on the Rich Eisen Show studio set in person here in Los Angeles, California. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Choose Love. I see your Bills T-shirt.
Yeah, they made these up after the terrible mass shooting last year, and the team was so integral in the community, so I continue to wear it about a year out from that event, and it worked very well with Damar Hamlin and everything that happened to the Bills, especially with those blizzards last year. So it was a difficult year. The Bills did the best they could. I think this next season, we're in a much more comfortable, less stressful position.
Well, and
the attention is on the Jets.
Yeah, no. We're not. There's no reverse psychology. We'll put a pin in that for a second, because I appreciate you bringing that T-shirt here. I mean, you could have done whatever you wanted, because I didn't see you on any of the rest of your book tour wearing a Bills dress
for the role here.
I appreciate
right?
it. So did you pack that saying, you're going to come out
here?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that.
Special
garb just for here.
Absolutely.
So this book has been in the making since your father passed? Or
no, so I left NBC in 2016, and part of that was...
You've been gone that long?
I have been gone that long, and I wanted to travel because I had felt unfulfilled there. Something was amiss, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but the idea was, okay, let me just get out of this job for 6 months to a year and figure things out. And as I traveled, I began to realize that there was two things that I was doing, is that I was simultaneously looking for something, which was ultimately the acceptance of my father to not necessarily be like him. And then I was running away from something, and that was processing the grief of losing my father. And I had never done that. He died in 2008. I went headstrong into the job at NBC, covered Capitol Hill for 8 years, working very long hours, enjoyed a lot of it. But at some point, I had this conversation with House Speaker John Boehner completely organically, and he goes, "What are you doing here? People can be in Capitol Hill for 40, 50, 60 years and never know anything else. You might be well served to get out of the Washington bubble a little bit." And so I did that. But when I started to travel, I realized, wow, I had never processed the grief of losing Dad, because if I ever did that, I thought I would lose him. I would have to confront that and he would be gone. And through this journey I took, which I write about, I come to realize, no, Dad's always around, but it takes a long time to get there.
What did you mean by what you just said? That you would lose him? Like,
I think when you lose a father at 22, and you think about, oh gosh, if I have to process that my best friend, my guiding light, is truly really gone, and I have to focus in on that, he might be gone forever in my mind. And it's arrested development to a degree, because if you think about, oh gosh, 22-year-old Luke, if I move away from that kid, then Dad is no longer around, literally. And it's interesting because when I started to then process that and wrestle with that, I come to realize, and I talk about this in the book, there's signs everywhere that your father's around. And then I would have conversations with people that said, you can talk to your parents who are gone. You just have to put yourself into that meditative state and listen. And I started to do that. And I go, yeah, he is here. He is around. And it was very heartwarming and moving, but it wasn't easy. And one of the most incredible things is, since this book has been out now the last few weeks, I've had a lot of people reach out to me. Some people in their 70s that have said, Luke, I lost my father and my mom 50 years ago, and I read this book, and I'm now beginning to understand sort of why I was acting the way I was acting. I'm not a psychologist or anything. I just sort of wrote my experience.
Yes.
But it's a common one. It's a common thread we have.
Well, I lost my dad at age 50.
Yeah.
And, after he passed, and I said something about it here from this chair into this microphone, I heard from everybody that, and as you were just alluding to, there is a whole host of a community that I had no idea that existed. Susie entered that community about a year and a half ago, lost her father, and it was kind of like I got welcomed to a club that nobody wants to be a part of.
It's a sad club. Yeah.
But it is also a beautiful thing to hear from people that, it's going to be okay. And, you wrestling with the way that you did, do you think you would have ever come to grips in the manner in which you are currently, coming to grips had you stayed in Washington, D.C.?
And I think the tweet you have pinned at the top of your profile about your dad is so heartwarming. And in that tweet, you go to a place of vulnerability and you show emotion. And I had never done that for a long time. I had sort of stored and ignored for a very long time. And when I began to travel, I became comfortable in uncertainty. And those anxieties that I had pertaining to losing my father to a heart attack, sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night pulsating, being like, I'm going to die of a heart attack just like Dad. This is awful. This is terrible. But once I started to travel and I became more comfortable, especially in my own skin, I began to be able to listen to the voice in my own head and process things I never had, which had I stayed in that job, I never would have done that, because I would have done two things. I would have tried to live up to my father's legacy every single day, which is the duty that you have to do this for Dad. And the other thing is I wouldn't have paid attention to my own self and my own health, my own needs, etc. So it was deeply impactful to do that. But it's not easy, because I think a natural inclination is you want to be there for your family. You want to be there for others. And in my case, I realized that going on television, that I brought a light for a lot of folks. People would turn it on and go, oh, we see Tim living on through Luke. And I like to do that. I wanted to make people feel comfortable. But at the end of the day, it was hard to hold on.
Is there any part in your travels, Luke Russert here, Look for Me There, Grieving My Father, Finding Myself, a bestseller currently on the New York Times bestseller list right here in the Rich Eisen Show. Is there a place in your travels specifically where you first spotted the corner to turn?
Yeah, there's two that are very important. So I'll tell you the story. When my father passed away at the funeral service, when people were processing out of the public memorial at the Kennedy Center, we played Somewhere Over the Rainbow, because that was one of his favorite songs.
It's my dad, too. My dad.
Is it? It's a beautiful song. So as people were processing out, there is this beautiful rainbow in D.C., and that was Dad saying hi. And so I've always had an affinity for rainbows. I was going through a difficult time in New Zealand because it was Valentine's Day. And oddly enough, Valentine's Day was a big moment with my father and I, which sounds weird. I'll explain why. I was a chubby kid. And my dad was worried that I wouldn't get any Valentines from the girls because I was kind of big when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And he would send me, like a Britney Spears poster with baby, I love you, happy Valentine's Day, and send me my favorite, which were Twix bars. And it was Valentine's Day in New Zealand. I was going through a difficult time. Like, why am I traveling? What am I doing? And this rainbow appears out of nowhere. And I go, okay, that's Dad saying this is what you should be doing. And then the 10th anniversary of his passing, there was a lot of remembrances on NBC and other networks. They asked me to be a part of them. I didn't want to do it. I was in a place of, I'm just trying to not engage with this right now. And I was in Iceland and I was walking by this beautiful waterfall, and there's the rainbow. And I bawled my eyes out with that one because it was the 10th anniversary, the day of his passing, and the rainbow was there and I was in a tough place and it was saying hi. So there's signs like that. People might say it's crazy. I believe it, and it's very comforting. It's very comforting.
And the significance of the title?
So 9 years old, Oriole Park at Camden Yards. We had season tickets. It's a hot mid-Atlantic, it's humid summer day. We're walking through the concourse, and he's holding my hand, and there's just this crush of people, and we get separated. And I fall back with the crowd, and he's moving up ahead. He realizes what's happened. He turns back around, and he comes running towards me, holds me in, and he goes, hey, if we're ever separated, just look for me there. And he points at a hot dog stand with the old school Oriole logo bird. And then he pulls me in closer. He goes, but we'll never be separated. And I that was so fitting. And he would say, look for me there. He would pick me up from a concert. Look for me there. Pre-cell phone era. Yeah. The airport, when I would come back from college, look for me there. And the coffee shop at the DC airport is still there. And every time I walk by it, oof, tear up. That's a tough one.
But do you look for him
there? But I look for him there, and I swear I see the silhouette. It's all there. I can close my eyes and I see, hunched over, hey buddy. It's wild.
Another place you could look for him is every single time you watch the Buffalo Bills.
It's the best. And I tell people is that people say, oh, sports, that doesn't matter. No, they do matter for so many people. And for me, those 3.5 hours when the Bills play on Sunday, he's alive again for me. I hear the cursing. I hear oh my God, the smell of chicken wings, the smell of light beer. It brings me back to some of the happiest moments of my childhood. And I dated a woman a number of years ago, and she said to me, "I can't believe it. You're so obsessive about football and these Buffalo Bills. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We should go out and do something on Sunday." I said, "No, I'm sorry. Like, this is the most important time of the week for me." And people got to understand that. I mean, it keeps the flame alive, and so many people have that bond through sports with their family. And it's been fascinating, Rich, is after my dad passed, my mom moved into the role of I want to go to the games, and she loves it, and it's
really?
so great to have. And so she likes baseball the most. So when the Nationals made the World Series, she goes, "I'm coming." I said, "Yes, Mom." It's right up there. It has a beer and a hot dog, and it's really neat to see.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love it. And Luke Russert here on the Rich Eisen Show. I think all the time. So does Susie as well, because we knew him many years ago together, and what he meant for us as well, because we met at ESPN. Stuart Scott. Every single time there's a big sporting event. I think, what would he think?
Yeah.
So what would your dad think about Josh Allen?
Oh, boy. Well, the first thing that he would probably say is, please get down more. Don't take those hits. Because he was, one of the things, unfortunately, about being a Bills fan is that you're prepped for the worst case scenario all the time. The forward lateral in Tennessee in 1999, my father did not cheer. When we kicked the field goal to go up, he did not cheer. He goes, there's still time. And that's why in the 13 seconds happened, all these people are texting me, "Congratulations, Josh Allen's great." I go, "It's not over. It's not over. It's not over." And it wasn't over. So the first thing he would say is, "Josh, please get down and don't get hurt." Second thing, though, is thank you for ingratiating yourself into the community the way you've done. I mean, Josh Allen is such a proud son of Buffalo now. He understands it. He gets the bond with community.
He does.
And he rises to that occasion, and he embraces it. And if you do that in Buffalo, you'll be loved for generations. Jim Kelly didn't want to come to Buffalo originally. He's now lived there his entire retirement. Thurman Thomas lives there. They are part of the community, and they love it there, and the community loves them back.
You are aware, though, that what you referred to as the forward lateral is called the Music City Miracle.
No, it's a forward lateral. It's been scientifically proven that it was a forward lateral. The University of Rochester released a study that showed it was a forward lateral.
What do you? I have not seen this paperwork.
It's absolutely the best science that's out there. I can promise you. We'll dig it up for you.
They scientifically.
If you look at Frank Wycheck asked me on his radio show, and I said, "Frank, I'd love to do it. You just have to admit that was a forward lateral." And he goes, "No." I said, "Okay, well, I'm not going to come on."
I'm the same way. I'm the same way with bussing with the boys about the motor in their bus. But
I mean, but that's what. So it's a forward lateral. If you look at it, it's forward lateral. They wouldn't call it. If you go back and watch it live, the band doesn't play when they score the touchdown, because they're like, "Oh, that didn't look legal."
That's so. Wait a minute. You said scientific. You're saying
there's
so
if you look at, I believe I'll have to find this for you.
Yes.
But there is a study that showed the trajectory of the ball is actually a forward lateral, and I think if you look at the tape, it can be proved. Indisputable evidence. That's up for people to decide. But looking back on it, at today's technology, I think it's a forward lateral.
You know how New Englanders refer to the tuck rule game as the snow game.
Yeah.
Like they don't refer to the tuck rule game like the rest of everyone on the planet. So you're referring to it as a forward lateral game.
It is. It is. Yes.
I respect it.
Thank you.
We also call that game a win. But whatever.
Started it all.
Back. Yes,
Just
it did.
saying.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it did.
And you've had, Charles Woodson talks about that game.
Yes, he does.
Quite a lot. And
Yes, he does. Meeting of two Michigan goats.
I'm about to say, and yeah, I think he's not over that. Or should he be?
No, I mean, it was a great recent documentary on that with the two of them talking about it.
Indeed.
Luke Russert here on the Rich Eisen Show. Look for me there, grieving my father, finding myself. Before I let you go, what else? What would your father think about the current political climate?
Oh, he'd be sad. One of the things that he really practiced was civility, and he felt that if you were civil, then people would trust you and honor your objectivity. And one of the things that's so sad now is this politics has moved into memes and name calling and vitriol, and there's sort of this idea of not really having civic participation and engagement, but more sort of how can we bully the other side? And that doesn't work. I mean, part of what a democracy is an experiment. I mean, it's still a really young form of government if you look over the generations of the world and how things are put together. And for democracy to work, you have to have active civic participation. And people are just so turned off by it now. And I think that's something we don't talk enough about, is that it's gotten to the point where people just, turn it off. I can't handle it. And that's not good, because the people who you're turning off that you can't handle are ones that are making very important decisions about your future. And you're seeing now, I think, the beginning of less qualified candidates, because so many people don't want to get involved. Like my generation, they're looking at it, why would I do that? I mean, my family gets thrown through the mud like that. And that would upset my father a lot, because he really did believe in the American dream and the American experience. And, politics was what got a kid from South Buffalo up to becoming moderator of Meet the Press. So it'd be sad for him.
Well, what your dad also stood for was accountability.
Yeah.
And so the media has an issue, has a role to play in everything else that's going on in this world today as well. I mean, I don't know if you watched the show Succession or not. I mean, but spoiler alert, the last episode was about how media can actually affect an election and how things are playing out in our current political world and media, and how, I find it very difficult to watch political interviews with political figures, because many in the media will ask the tough question once and have zero follow-up questions, because potentially most of the time they are not armed with information to push back, and that there is cynicism that continues to get entrenched because there's no pushback from the media. And the one person who does it, like your dad used to do, is Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
Where he's armed with tons of information on the spot, off the top of his head, in note form. Like your dad on Meet the Press always used to have something to push back on, and then not drop it just after one follow-up either.
When my father took the job in 1991, he reached out to one of the original moderators, a guy named Lawrence Spivak, who at that time was in his late 80s. And he said, "What do I do?" And Spivak goes, "Learn as much as you can about the person you're interviewing and then take the other side." And my father was trained as a lawyer, and he would do a prosecutorial real move into, this is what you said back then, why did you change your position, and go forward.
And put it up on
the screen. The one thing that drives me crazy, and I don't like to play media critic, but this is something where there needs to be improvement on, is the format. My father had 24-minute segments, 31-minute segments, where it was get in the ring, one-on-one. I might ask you the same question for 15 minutes because you're not going to get an answer, but the viewer benefits from that by seeing how you're dodging and weaving. And one of the things that politicians have been very good at now is they run out the clock. They can have all this bluster and bravado. They don't answer the question. They'll talk about the weather, et cetera, and they run out the clock. And then the interviewer isn't armed with the facts, moves on to the next question, and gets bulldozed. Go back to a format where it's 24 minutes, 31 minutes, one-on-one, and have that. And if you don't want to do that, then don't get in the ring. And honestly, a lot of politicians will still get in the ring because they want the airtime and they want the opportunity. Top ones might not, but that's okay. Then they can show that they're weak. You gotta, it's a little bit like boxing in that way.
You're right. It's a format question too. The number of times that I'm listening to an interview and I'm like, well, there's going to be some pushback here. And then you hear the anchor say, we're going to have to leave it there.
It's crazy.
And then they move on to some, panda getting born in some zoo somewhere. And it's just like, what is happening? But I'll be honest, sports is like that too.
It is.
I learned a long time ago, by the way, just real quick, Al Davis would only be interviewed live many times. Costas told me this once, I think, because he knew that you only had 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And if he gave an answer that was 7 minutes long to start,
it's brilliant.
He knew it.
I write in my book, one of the reasons why I left NBC is I was kind of on the fence, but I had done this report in Congress about veterans issues and veterans affairs. I was very happy to put out there, and it got bumped by Donald Trump's reaction to the death of Harambe the gorilla. And that was my
that was it.
Time to go.
That was when you tapped out?
We're good.
That's when you saw triple zeros on the
that
clock?
That was it.
Harambe, everybody.
R.I.P.
Look for me there. Grieving My Father, Finding Myself by Luke Russert. Beautiful book. And I appreciate you inscribing it here.
Well, thank you for opening up this space, honestly, which you did regarding your father and remembering him in such a vulnerable, open way. It was deeply impactful and inspiring to me.
No
so thank
kidding.
you. It was.
I am touched by that. And my dad loved Somewhere Over the Rainbow as well. Because he loved Judy Garland. And again, if it wasn't for my brother loving sports, this show would have been about show tunes, which is
We're all happy for that.
Thank you so much. Look for me there. Grieving My Father, Finding Myself by Luke Russert, right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.